We move to the next speaker, who is Tawanda, speaking from the US. He's going to introduce himself. Tawanda, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Eric, and thank you, David, for this opportunity to share my thoughts with the community. Very interesting topic. I have the pleasure of talking after very interesting talks by other speakers. So I'll try by all means to keep you engaged. My name is Tawanda Muzhingi. I am a food scientist, I'm a nutritionist, and I'm a development expert. I'm based here in North Carolina. I'm an adjunct professor at North Carolina State University, and I'm also working with RTI as well here in North Carolina. Before that, I was with the International Potato Center in Kenya, working on sweet potato. So I think the topic of neglected crops has been already defined. What are they? I see them as foods that have greater value that we have neglected to utilize on a larger scale. There are people still eating these crops, but they are not disseminated widely to the benefit of the larger community. Yet we have a lot of problems that these crops can help us alleviate. So some of the crops that I highlighted here on this slide, as you can see, in Africa, there is in West Africa, fonio, some highlighted in Zimbabwe, bambara and spider plants, and teff, it was mentioned, and some green leafy vegetables, the cowpea leaves, they are a delicious vegetable. I like them when they're dried and then they're cooked with peanut butter. I wish the whole world would realize how awesome it is. So there are many globally that similar crops that are not well utilized. So, you know, we are facing a big problem in Africa in that there's rapid population growth. I think by some numbers say 70% of our population in Africa is made up of young people, and it's growing, the fastest growing continent in the world. And this growth is mainly in the cities. I mean, some estimates say there are close to 70 people being added to bigger cities every hour in Africa, like Johannesburg, Lagos, Addis Ababa, Nairobi. So we have this change in demographic structure of Africa, where we have a lot of young people and a lot of these young people living in the cities. So it's a challenge, obviously, for resources, for governments to support these people. But for me, it's also an innovation space. Innovation is about solving problems that we have. So some of these problems are related to hunger, people not having enough food to eat, and malnutrition, not getting enough nutrients for the body to give optimal health. So why are we having problems? I mean, we have issues with food nutrition security. We've got issues with agribusiness development and sustainability issues. So all this can be solved when we have functional, what we call innovation ecosystems. Innovation ecosystems are loosely defined as an interconnected network of companies, government entities, private sector, universities, academia, all working together to share technologies and knowledge to develop new products and services. So you find that in many African countries, you have a lot of innovators, a lot of innovations happening, but the innovation ecosystems are not functional because these entities are not talking together for common good. I'm going to talk about something that many people here will get excited about. I'm going to talk about food and drink. Most, I'm going to talk about beer because many of you love to drink and have fun. But I've been working with root and tuber crops for a long time in my last employment, working with cassava. So as a food scientist, this is what I saw. In many countries, cassava is a neglected crop. In West Africa, it's a staple crop, but in other countries, it's not. And where it is a staple crop, people are running away from it for reasons that we've had before. When people move, they get educated, they move to the city, they want to abandon the crops that they grew up with because they remind them of poverty. They want to eat pizza and what have you, the burgers, but they leave their fufu and gari because that's what they grew up eating and they run away from them. So you have an example in Mozambique and in Malawi. I had the pleasure of enjoying these fine beers. We have the Impala and Kucha Kucha, both of which are made using cassava, which have a very low economic value in these communities. These crops are very resilient because they're drought tolerant and they produce a lot of food. I mean, in Thailand, in China, they are very industrial crops that are used for processing starch, right? And this starch is exported globally to make food ingredients. So it is an instance where innovation around the crop to increase its economic value resulted in a liquor or a beer that people love to eat. But you may find that on the label itself, you don't see anywhere where it says cassava because the marketing people thought that if they write cassava on the bottle, maybe people will run away from it because they look lowly at the product and won't buy it. So they just say fine starch or fine ingredients. But in actual fact, this is a cassava beer. So this is one way in which a traditional or an orphan crop can be commercialized and create economic value for the farmers, create economic opportunities for young people who are unemployed in the cities, in the growing of the cassava, in the processing of the cassava, in the R&D process to make different food products. And this is good for our nation. This can help us gain economic advantage over these neglected crops. This is another example also of cassava in Nigeria. They also have a beer called Ego beer, which they try to market in those markets where cassava is used as a staple and find ways in which the West African community can also gain economic value from the crop by making also the cassava beer. Similarly, in Southern Africa, there is the Ego beer or the Ego lager, which I think I've seen it in Zimbabwe at some point. And here in Namibia, they are making this Ego beer using, I think, one of the neglected crops. I think it's sorghum that they use to process this beer. And it's quite affordable for people who may not want to drink the opaque beer. They may want to drink the clear beer, so they have options. But this unlocks the value of these traditional crops, and more investments can go into these crops that they can be grown on a larger scale, and farmers who depend on them can grow them economically and use them for food, for feed, and other things and get income out of it. So the reason why some of these crops will remain neglected crop is because there are no opportunities to unlock their economic potential. So here we have an opportunity where we can showcase that commercialization of some of these crops can unlock the value and they can result in more people growing them, and then they end up consuming them at a household level. And also they have a ready market to sell these crops where the food industry can innovate and come up with interesting food products. I've been working on sweet potato for a long time, and right now we are working with SanBio and with Eric and one of our partners, McCain, in South Africa. We look at sweet potato. This one is an orange sweet potato, is rich in beta carotene. That's why it's orange. Lots of people in Africa are vitamin A deficient. You get most of your vitamin A from animal source foods, and most people cannot afford to eat animal source foods on a daily basis, so they get deficient in vitamin A. Yet we can grow sweet potatoes. We've been growing sweet potatoes for a long time in Africa. I mean, their presence on the continent dates millennia ago, and it can be considered as an indigenous crop. Yet, I mean, it came from the Andes, like many of the crops that we eat today. But to many, it's an African crop, and it's a neglected crop. It's a crop that is usually grown by women, and it's a crop that is of low economic value in many countries. It's only eaten when people have no money. I know back home in Zimbabwe, I saw a kid who was complaining about eating sweet potato every day. He wanted real bread. They actually gave him bread. So here we have a situation where we took this crop and found that people may not like to eat it like they do their traditional sweet potato. So we wanted to find ways in which we can incorporate it in the diet. So one way to do that was to make it an ingredient. So this is converting the sweet potato either into a puree, which is a mashed form, or into a flour. And then the flour can partially replace wheat flour to make bakery products or fried products. You can incorporate it into amagwinya, into fat cooks, into chapatis and mandazis, into bread and bun. And the end product is a very tasty product that is soft in texture. And then it has got zero sugar because the sweet potato is sweet naturally. So it's great for people who are trying to control their blood sugar or their weight, and it reduces the amount of fat in the product. So got all these varied economic benefits that come from using this crop as an ingredient that can make the bread production process more profitable, but at the same time delivering nutrition to people in the urban areas, and also providing economic opportunity for rural farmers or commercial farmers who are growing this crop as a business or as a profession. So this unlocks opportunities for the economy and for national development, and more resources can be put towards the dissemination and utilization of this neglected crop. So beyond the bread, you got different colors of these crops. Like this is a purple-fleshed sweet potato that can be used to make dairy products. As you can see, you can have it as a base ingredient for yogurt, as a base ingredient for ice cream. So this is something that can be done in Africa. I mean, it's been done elsewhere. It's been done on a smaller scale, but it can be done on a larger scale and more profitably. And the same can be done for a pumpkin, which I can also think it's a neglected crop. I grew up eating a pumpkin puree, which is called nopi in Tshwane, which is basically pumpkin and peanut sauce mixed together with some salt and sugar. We have issues with vitamin A deficiency in Africa. We have issues with weaning foods that are given to kids that are starch-based, that are made from cereals, that are deficient in nutrients. Yet these neglected crops like pumpkin are rich in beta carotene, just like the orange sweet potato, but they are not widely used for child feeding policies in many African countries, especially in Southern Africa, where I come from. So we can have, like here in the States, you've got pumpkin puree, which they used to make sweet potato pie or pumpkin pie. I mean, we can have entrepreneurs innovating around these neglected crops and developing crops that can have significant public health impact, providing nutritious foods to our kids that are 2 years and above or 6 months and above, those that are starting to eat food that need liquid food or paste that are easy to swallow and digest. And even for us as adults, we can have it as a dessert. We can incorporate it into other dishes. I mean, there are a lot of chefs here who can do many things with these purees. And not forgetting, I mean, some of the neglected foods are not just crops. We have insects actually. Insects are a big topic at the moment. They're generating a lot of excitement globally because of the climate smart nature of their production system. They can multiply in large quantities within a short period of time. In some cases, they can be eaten as they are whole. This is a green, I think it's a green beetle that is a delicacy in the southern part of Zimbabwe and maybe the northern parts of South Africa. And you can see people can dry it and they can eat it as a snack, or you can eat it as relish together with your pap or shima or saza or istwala. So these are crop foods that we have within our ecosystem that when we put resources, we can commercialize them and they can be ingredients for the food industry, or they can result in enterprise development and result in employment creation for young people and generate economic activity around the economy. And we can have multiple benefits from these innovations around insects. And there are lots of edible bugs in many African countries that have not been explored, or that are being done on a small scale, or that are used mostly for resilience. They're eaten when people are under stress, when there's no food around, and that's the only option they have. But we can make them part and parcel of our everyday diet in many cities where people are looking for nutritious food. So one of the bottlenecks that I see with the utilization of a neglected crop is that there are no resources to unlock their potential. We need to invest, for instance, in plant breeding, where you can develop varieties that are more resilient to climate change. You can develop varieties that are more nutritious. You can develop varieties that are resistant to certain diseases and pests. You can develop varieties that can be utilized for different purposes. A variety that is good for brewing may not be good for bread, may not good for your salad. So you need different varieties that meet specific purposes or that meet specific needs in the market. So investment in our public agricultural systems is really important, so that the RRC in South Africa or the Department of Research and Specialist Services in Zimbabwe or CARI or CAURO in Kenya can put resources, train scientists in plant breeding tools, and then we do major investments in our neglected crop. Right now, our plant breeders are focused mostly on the staples like maize and wheat, but the neglected crops like this cacti fruit, I don't think there's anybody doing breeding of cacti fruit in Africa at all. Maybe in Mexico, where they've commercialized it, they're doing it. Hence, you can see they're exporting their crop to the US, and it's made into different teas and other commercial products that are of high value. So we need public resources to support our breeding efforts into these neglected crops, so that we can unlock their full potential and not and we can actually circumvent the supply chain issues once we generate the demand and excitement in the market for these crops. So this platform is great. Thank you for the organizers, because it fits perfectly with the African Union Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. We want to make sure that the food innovations are ready to power Africa into the future. With this, I'd like to end my talk, and thank you for your attention.